Hey, this is the Will Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is a topic of, do we need a revolution to change the world? So when it comes to all the issues that face the world, from political corruption, environmental damage, to global warming, do we need a revolution to be able to change the world? Okay, is what okay, as well as give a specific solution as well for this video to what I believe to deal with these main issues that the world suffers from. Okay, so that is what this video is going to consist of. So now I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to the topic of, do we need a political revolution to change the world, the simple answer to that question is no. We do not need a political revolution to change the world. And the reason why I simply believe that is political revolutions do not work. Okay, because the problem with political revolutions, which obviously occurs worldwide, in this case, of course, revolution, to deal with the issues, like I said before, government corruption, which relates to things like the government, not fulfilling its promises of fixing things like infrastructure, like medicine, as well as, of course, schooling. In other words, putting money into things that would help benefit society, to, of course, the high cost of living, all that type of stuff, things like that, to, of course, environmental damage, which, of course, affects us in the sense that, obviously, without the Amazon rainforest, the world would be kind of screwed, because it helps a lot, to, of course, running out of animal species, and so on and so forth, and running out of resources for food we need to eat, and of course global warming, which is just the idea that the world's going to heat up and it's creating massive environmental problems. All those things you can imagine, okay? The truth of the matter is, when it comes to all these issues that the world suffers from, I just don't believe in this day and age, specifically with, of course, the internet and the philosophy people use, which is a non-violent one, which obviously would be the preferred method. I just don't believe it's going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen. We've already seen revolutions happen so many times, whether it could be the Arab Spring Revolution, it could be, the Occupy Wall Street movement, and even the latest Gen Z protests I heard about just last year. All these attempts at revolution, they always just fail. And there is a reason why they fail. The reason why they fail is that, first and foremost, okay, these revolutions don't have a leader, okay? If you don't have a leader, how are you going to truly expect anything to change? You need someone to kind of figure out what obviously makes sense and what doesn't make sense. In all honesty, to answer your question, to be quite blunt and honest with you, you need to figure out what makes sense, like what are the rules we stand by, like what's our ideology, what are our beliefs, like what specifically, if we get what we want, are we going to do afterwards, okay? That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Most groups, all these revolutions, don't have leaders, which is actually really stupid, but it's one of the fundamental principles of so-called grassroots movements, to not have a leader, which of course is stupid, as not only do we not have a leader who represents what we stand for, it obviously encourages infighting, because people will stand for this, some people will stand for that, people in general will stand for different things, and it'll be different groups. Like you have the communists who think we should do this, we have the socialists who think we should do this, we have the capitalists who think we should do this, even the fascists, they're always there. Well, sometimes they're there for whatever reason, and even among those groups, there's different ideological differences and stuff, and they have infighting, and it just breaks apart. So the idea that we somehow need a revolution, like a massive protest, in other words, to fix the problem, what exactly is that going to do? Even if we had a violent revolution, what's that going to do either? You're just going to have the same issues, specifically on a worldwide scale. You're going to have people with different ideologies, opinions, and views who are going to start shooting up each other and causing more chaos. That is the honest truth of the matter. So what the fuck do you think is going to happen? To answer your question. Simply put it, no, we're not going to. solutions don't work. This is not the fucking 1960s anymore. Like, the world is a lot more complicated nowadays, you know, because you have a lot more opinions and views on things in general, let alone ideologies. And the biggest one of all, you have the internet now. So people just say all sorts of silliness and stuff, and you know, and as well as saying all that type of silliness, it just helps create all these different beliefs and opinions. Just like, why did the Me Too movement fall apart so badly? Because there is some legitimate concerns it has. A lot of women were treated very badly by men historically. But the thing is that you have people who add things in, such as, you know, that is actually really stupid. Like one of the things that the Me Too movement, some of them at least, added in was just not really verifying what like exactly is sexual assault, and they created a culture of just, I say whatever I believe, and a lot of people just said stupid things like, oh well, women have the right to conceive, you know, or well, not even that, just stupid things that don't matter, like, you know, like having these really dumb ideas of what sexual harassment is, which is why a lot of men are not interacting with women, to even just simply saying, you know, men are evil and men are bad, you know, because a lot of women, to be quite blunt and honest with you, you know, just were giving dumb ideas. Like I was saying before, some of them were even going as far as to say that, you know, even talking to women, you know, and stuff could be considered sexual assault, and they're just being dumb about it. They weren't doing a good job, and even things like believe all victims of sexual assault, which is actually really stupid because some of them do lie. You know, some women more specifically do lie. They just did a lot of stupid things, and it just kind of helped break it down and cause a lot of problems. And that's a perfect example. What I mean right there, Black Lives Matter, same thing. It stood for something good, but then people on the internet just added all their opinions and views and things, and just fucked up everything like they usually do. You know, for that matter, okay? Especially when it gets on the internet. So in short, to answer your question, absolutely not, you know, when it comes to the idea of revolution, okay? It's just gonna fall apart. There's gonna be more chaos, more problems, and that's the truth. So now the question, of course, since this is quite depressing, is what is the solution? Well, the solution to answer that question is simply like Rosa Parks. She's actually the person I look up to. I prefer Rosa Parks out of all the civil rights activists, okay? Because their way of thinking is the smartest one, which not even just can be applied to racism, but literally to everything in the world, okay? Which is that if somebody does something that you do not like, you do not support them, okay? Like, for example, when it comes to things like easily, you know, things like, for example, maybe easily like the environment, like environmental damage or global warming, the biggest thing you can obviously do, common sense would indicate, is not support companies that do things like that, okay? For that matter, okay? If you have a company that, of course, is supporting environmental damage from Amazon rainforest, do not support it whatsoever, okay? In any way, shape, or form. You know, if their beef comes from the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest, do not support those companies, okay? And of course, there's not as much of a demand, there's not going to be as much of a need to get cattle, you know, to use cattle to obviously, you know, deal with the Amazon rainforest, okay? You know, in other words, cut it down, okay? You know, let alone all the other products that rely heavily, such as soya beans, absolutely plays a massive role in, of course, the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest, let alone maybe when it comes to global warming, not support companies that do things that promote global warming, you know? Which brings me to another point of my solution, you know, of course, is aside from, of course, boycotting, okay, is, you know, supporting people who make things in a way you like, okay? So why don't you just also start creating your own car companies if you hate the idea of global warming, to create electric cars And of course, to add to that, if you're not able to, of course, do that, which most of us will not be able to do, you can also support those companies, okay? Let alone when it comes to government corruption, maybe when it comes to that specific issue, form, new support new parties. Don't support the same old parties that are going to do the same old shit that are just going to support you all the time. So that is the way we can solve these problems, to answer your question, okay? Being smart about it, okay? Whether you can boycott it or help support people who make things in the way you like. In other words, create your own shit, for that matter, so that is the honest truth. So what we can do to make the world a better place, instead of saying we're going to have some silly revolution where we expect the government to do anything and they don't even do anything. And that is the honest truth. So anyway, this is my video. This is all to say. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you like this video and videos like this, remember to thumbs this video up and hit the subscribe button. And this is all to say, and simply put, I'm out. So bye.